Hello there. I've had a couple of questions on smiling blades, and the main thrust of it basically is, can you hone a smiling blade with a simple X stroke and not have to do rolling X's? Well, yes and no is the answer to that, because it really depends on how much of a smile the blade's got and the angle you use when you use an X stroke. But let's look at a smiling blade. I've got this paper here, and I'm going to use a pen and some paper and try to explain the best I can. And my drawing is not going to be all that great, so. For purposes of discussion, this is a straight razor. You have the center of the blade here. The toe. And the heel. With me so far? Alright. The reason that you use a rolling X on a smiling blade is because there's something wrong with it. Okay? Now, you don't normally use a straight X stroke, but I will show you what I'm talking about later. But generally, if you hone a smiling blade, pretend that this is a smiling blade. If you hone a smiling blade straight on, alright, what happens is you will miss the heel and the toe, assuming that the blade has got a significant smile in it. And you'll hone the center. So you will end up with a blade that looks like that, where the edge of the blade is not following the curve of the spine. Or you will end up, worst case scenario, with a frown like that. And if you don't have tape on the spine, by the way, I'm not starting the tape argument up. I'm just saying that if you hone without tape, the spine is also affected. So that, and that's the way it's designed and all that. I'm not arguing that, but what happens is you'll end up with spine wear like that. And it'll be ugly. And in order to correct it, you're going to have to correct this edge, and you're going to have to grind away more of the spine in order to take care of it. And now, understand, if you're using tape, it doesn't matter. You're still going to have to grind away steel here. You're going to lose a lot of the width of that blade to get that to come out right. So that's why you do not generally hone smiling blades with a straight ahead stroke. Let's move that out of the way. And like this. Now, if the blade just has a slight smile on this, I would consider straight, although there is a bit of curve to it. If you hone something with just a slight smile, a lot of times you can get away with that. Alright, let me put some water on this stone. So, a lot of times with a smiling blade, you can get away with that, and it'll be alright. I've even seen people hone like that on a smiling blade. That'll work. To me, I don't like that. I can't give you a super reason for it. I just don't like that approach. But now with a smiling blade, normally what I will do is I will make a sweep stroke, and you will see, if you look, the water rolls up along the tip and the heel a lot. It's not doing it now. There you go. You see how that is doing it, because you're making that sweep, and what you're doing is you're getting the whole thing. As a matter of fact, even with a sort of a straight blade, I will make, you've seen me do it and you may not have noticed, but when you watch me hone with an X stroke, and a great deal of the time, this is what I'm doing. Now, if there's nothing wrong with that blade, you're good like that. But an extreme smiling blade is not the only reason you would use a rolling X. So let me draw a more conservative razor, or try to anyway. It's got a bit of a smile to it. Most razors do, but not much. Okay, so let's look at this. Sometimes what will happen is you'll be honing a razor, and it might be a pretty straight one like that, okay? And you'll either wear away at the center here, or you'll get like that much of the edge. You'll miss the very toe, or you'll miss the very heel. Things like that. Now what's happening on that blade is there's some kind of geometry issue. It might be warped. It might have funky spine wear. It could be almost anything. It might have a twist. But the point of it is, there's something wrong with the geometry of that razor. Now, there's all kind of videos on YouTube to tell you how to figure out what's wrong with it and then find a way to correct it. Grinding away on the spine of every razor that I come across because it's got a little bit of a geometry issue goes against my grain. Sorry. I don't care who doesn't like it, and I'm not trying to start anything. And the people that are correcting the razors, if they know what they're doing, that's perfectly fine. Because the razor is meant to grind away at the spine and the edge at the same time to keep correct geometry. So I'm not slamming anybody for correcting a fault in a razor. But there are other ways to do it that I prefer, because I don't like spending hours and hours restoring a blade just to come back and grind the living crap out of the spine so that it looks like dog after I get done. I spent hours and hours doing the best I could to get it as pretty as I could get it, and now I'm going to grind that off? No, not going to happen. So there's a technique that I use, and a lot of this is recommended a lot of times to beginners. And people have a tendency to think that it's a beginner technique. But in my opinion, it doesn't matter whether you're a beginner or whether you've honed for a few years like I have. This technique really helps. Okay? You have things like tap and wobble tests. People will sight down the blade, all kinds of stuff to determine a warp, that kind of deal. I don't generally worry about it. What I do, there's a trick called the marker trick. And it's, you take a marker, a permanent marker, and mark the edge of the blades. Alright? Now, a lot of people, and I did for a long time, marked it like this. But what generally ends up happening is the razor will cut that felt, and then I got to buy a new marker. So I saw Caleb McCullough do this. I don't know if he originated, but I saw him do this. And it's something that I highly recommend. And the way he marks a straight razor, it's like that. Coming from the grind out that way so that you're not cutting the marker up. And that's perfect. And what this technique does, let me get some soapy water. Once you give it time to dry, you see the edge has marker on it. So now I just did one side, but alright, look at this. You see how, sorry I didn't mean to hit camera, but you see how I've got the stone is hitting from here all the way up. But it's not hitting here at the toe, right? You see that? Well, now you see, if you look at it, I changed my stroke and it's getting closer. So now, with this technique, I can tell where the stone is hitting the edge and where it's not. And so, and don't worry about this, that marker will come off with a little bit of rubbing alcohol. A lot of times, let's see, a lot of times, if you just wipe it, you see it's starting to come off now. I wonder. A lot of times, if you just do that, a lot of it will come off, but it'll come off with rubbing alcohol, lickety split. So don't worry about that. But you can see from this marker technique where the blade is hitting the stone and where it's not. And you can adjust your stroke in various ways to get that. Now, if I adjust a stroke like that and I'm still not hitting the heel all the way, like right there, well, on this side, what I might do, that's a little bit of a rolling X. And you see, it's starting to get that. Alright? But, that's not a smiling blade. Alright? But it required an X stroke, a rolling X, to get that heel all the way. At least on this side of the razor. On this side it might not. But I didn't mark that, so we don't know. Matter of fact, I pretty much do know because I've honed this razor several times. That's one of the reasons I chose it. But to help you to understand it, look, the rolling X is not an exclusive to a smiling blade. It's a technique that is used to deal with geometry issues, one of many. Another thing I might do is I might go or put my thumb here, and I'm not putting any pressure, just the weight of my thumb. for a few strokes until it comes. The point I'm trying to make is that questions like, can I hone a smiling blade without using a rolling edge? Miss the point. There are things about the techniques that we use that you'll hear talked about on the forums, or rather now the Facebook pages, okay, the groups. You'll hear them talked about all the time, but you're only hearing things that are specific to certain situations that come up in a thread or something like that. The only way to really know and understand how to hone a straight razor and what you need to do for this particular blade or that particular blade is to hone that blade. It's to understand the concepts and ideas about the razor's geometry and how the strokes that you make on the stone affect the spine and the edge. And so it's hard to answer questions like that because it really depends on a bunch of different factors, and I don't have your razor in front of me. So one of the biggest things that I would encourage is, yes, ask questions, but understand that it's going to take time on the stones for you to really understand what's going on razors as far as hunting goes, and each razor is unique. People say all the time, well, I don't want to hone the gold dollars because their geometry issues are bad. Or I don't want to hone or own vintage blades because they have so many geometry issues. And I'm here to tell you that new blades do too. Because steel reacts to heat. And tempering it, quenching it, hardening it, heat treating it, whatever it is you want to call the processes involved. That heat, that cooling, all of that's going on, the steel can move. Now, you good metallurgists, good blacksmiths, or razor makers or knife makers or whatnot, there are techniques that can be used to mitigate a lot of that, and some of the bigger factories probably with the cryogenic treatment and stuff like that. See, I don't understand stuff like that. All I know is general things about base carbon steel, good quality knife quality or razor quality plain simple carbon steel. Alright, when you start getting into the other stuff, I don't know so much, but I'm sure that there are techniques that will mitigate that somewhat, but it doesn't matter. There are going to be those that slip through the cracks. In any kind of factory environment where you're purchasing a new razor, an old razor, doesn't make a dime's worth of difference. They're all going to have, a few of them are going to have geometry issues. Now, a good grinder might be able to grind that out, but not always. And so it's a straight razor, people, whether it's new or whether it's old, doesn't make a dime, or whether it's Chinese, like the gold dollars, if the steel's good, okay, it'll be a good razor if you can hone it. But they're all going to have funky issues from time to time. And as a honer, you know, I wish I had the money to throw away a $150 razor and get another one, but on the off chance that it might be straight, because I didn't learn to figure out how to work the geometry of a straight razor to get the edge that I was looking for. Okay, not many of us have that availability. Not many of us have the funds for that. So it's a learning thing. You have to continually learn and process in your mind what it is that you see and hear and feel. And look that blade over. Use the Sharpie test. Look at how it's hitting the edge when you start to hone it and make corrections. I mean, that's what honing is about. Once again, and I'm not saying anybody's asked me to, but there's kind of an idea that everything can be explained. If you're looking at somebody face to face or on a Facebook page, I can take words and explain to you how to do this and how to do that in honing. Well, there's quite a bit in honing that I can do that with. There's a whole bunch that the only way you're ever going to figure it out is that. Put that on a stone and move it back and forth and watch what happens. And so, I don't know if I answered it or not to your satisfaction, but that's as best I can do. Bless you, and I'll talk to you later.